Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Well, today's video is a little bit different, quite short, and basically I'm going to show you how to fly the plane manually, do a manual approach and a manual landing, coming in with no autopilot and no ILS. Now this is a very important skill to have, especially since 99% of all landings are all manual. Very rarely a pilot will use the ILS unless it's particularly bad weather or an emergency. Mostly they always do manual landings, and I've got used to it over the years because I'm not technical, and I've messed up the autopilot, I've messed up the ILS. I have no choice, I've got to bring it in manually. So over the years I've had to develop that skill, and I'm okay at it. I'm not perfect, but I'm okay. So I'm going to share what I've learned with you, and so that you can do less of the ILS and more with the manual approach and the manual landing, if that's a skill that you would like to develop. Now it's basically all about three things, and that's what we're going to touch on and talk about today. 3 points. 1, being at the right altitude. 2, being at the right speed. And 3, being rightly configured. That is, with your gear down, your flaps down, and a combination of the other two, being at the right speed and altitude. So that's what we're going to look at today. Get those 3 ducks in a row, and you can just fly it like a Cessna. Throw it around, point towards the runway, bring it in easy as pie, and land it. Okay, I know it probably a lot harder than what it sounds, but it does take practice. Okay, but if you've got those 3 things in a line, it makes your life a heck of a lot easier. So let's have a look at my flight plan today. I'm flying from Miami over to KRSW. I'm going to depart Miami, come up over here. I'm coming up to Grit, my first waypoint. I'm going to turn around to the left. Now, as I turn around to the left, I've determined in my mind that I'm going to come down to 5,000 feet. When I come to the next waypoint to turn around towards my final approach, I'm going to come down to 2,000 feet. When I turn to get onto my final approach, I want to be at 2,000 or just under. Okay, so that takes care of the first one, being at the right altitude. Now also, when I come around to line up with my get onto my final approach, I want to be at the right speed. I want to be at just under 200 knots, okay, or 150 knots. That's what I want to be at. If I'm in the 700, I want to be at around about 140, 150 knots. If I'm in the 800, I want to be at 150, around about 150, 160. Same if I'm in the 800, I want to be at around about 160 knots as I come around into my finals, under 2,000 feet and fully configured. I want those 3 ducks in a row as I make that final turn towards my final approach. I'm going to come in low and slow, and we're going to be all set up with those 3 points before we reach our finals. Okay, if you're not on those 3 points before you reach the finals, just forget it. Hit escape, start again, or get ready to go around. Okay, that's the main point of today, being on those 3 points before you get onto your final approach. Okay, so I'm going to take off, start up the airplane. I'm going to take off, and I'm going to bring you back in on my flight just as I'm at this waypoint and turning around and heading towards my final. Right, now as you can see, I have a waypoint coming up here. Now if I show you my flight plan, you can see this waypoint is going to take me over to the left, and I'm going to curve around for my final approach. So I've decided that here I'm going to be down to 5,000 feet. Just as I come around to my approach, I'm going to be down to 2,000 feet. This is one of our 3 requirements, guys. Right speed, right altitude, and right configuration. So at this waypoint here, before I come into my final approach, I want to be at 2,000 feet, and I want to be under 200 knots. I want to be going around about 160, 150 knots, okay, as I approach my final approach in here. Also want to be starting to get ready for my final configuration, and that is bringing my flaps down. Okay, so we're going to start coming down. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to start coming down towards that initial level that I want of 5,000 feet. Vertical speed, come down, minus 1.8 will be enough. And we're turning around to the left now to head out towards that big loop for our final approach. We can also bring our speed down. We're going downhill, remember, so our plane is going to want to speed up. So we can bring our speed down a little bit as well. We don't need to drop off too much speed at the moment. We're not going particularly fast. Our big concern at this stage is getting down to 5,000 feet and then down to 2,000 feet. Now where's that flight plan I was showing you? Here we go. So here's our curve round to the left. I want to be at 5,000 feet, and here I want to be down to 2,000 feet, okay, as I'm crossing over around here. So our big concern at this stage is to initially get down to 5,000, ready to go down to 2. Okay, I'll talk to you again soon. We'll fade back in when I'm looping around towards my final approach and I'm getting those 3 things in line that I mentioned. See you soon. Okay, so I am down to 5,000 feet now. As you can see, my flight plan, I'm going to be curving around to the right to get onto my final approach. Here is my flight plan. I said I want to be at 5,000 feet here, and I am. As I pass through this waypoint and come around here, I'm going to be at 2,000 feet. And when I'm on my finals, I'm going to drop under 2,000 feet and just point the plane towards the runway. That's all I have to do. So I'm at 5,000, coming through here, I want to be at 2,000, okay? And I want to be just under 200 knots. Right, so let's make sure we are doing that. We're at 5,000 feet now, coming up to this big curve around here. I want to be down to 2,000 feet, so let's do that now. 2,000 feet. Now remember, if we're at the right speed, the right altitude, we have the right configuration, we just fly this plane like a Cessna, okay? We swing it around, do whatever we want, and just point it towards the end of the runway. That's all we have to do. Got to remember you're in the 800 and not the 700. Very important with your speed as you approach. If you're in the 900, you'll need to be a bit faster. 700, a little bit slower. The 700, I'll be coming in around about 130, 140 knots. 800, I'm coming in around about 150 knots. If I was in the 900, I'll be coming in between 150, 160 knots. But here we are coming down to 2,000 feet now. Once we start curving around here and we're on our finals, we will turn off the autopilot, no ILS, and we will fly it manually because we will be completely configured ready. Coming down now to 2,000 feet. Still going a bit fast because we're going downhill. That will slow down soon as we level out. And we are at the right altitude. Our next concern is to be at the right speed, which is just about 200 knots. And then after that, we've got to make sure we are fully configured, and then we'll be all good. Very soon our plane will head round to the right, and we'll start to come under 200 knots. Right, we're under 200 knots. We're slowly bringing our flaps down. As we turn around to the right, you will see our 3 points. 1, we are at the right altitude. And 2, we're under 200 knots, we're at the right speed. So all we do now is we work on configuring the aircraft. That's the gear down and the flaps down. Our flaps are going to be down almost full. Okay, I'm going to start bringing my speed down now. Come down to 170. Okay, we're turning around to the right. Our big loop around, and then we'll be getting on to our finals. Okay, our speed is at 150 knots. Altitude just under 2,000 feet. So that's the 2 requirements. The third requirement was that we are configured. So we're going to bring our flaps down more. And as soon as we've stopped swinging around our bank angle, we're going to drop our gear. Okay, here we go. We're straightening up now because we're getting on to our finals. So I'm going to bring down my gear. Now you can see our flaps. Our flaps are down almost full. Our gear is down. Now we've met the 3 requirements that we need to manually fly the aircraft for a manual approach. I'm going to bring my speed down a little bit more. We want that down to, let's say 155 at this stage. So we'll bring the speed down a little bit more. Our altitude is good. A little bit more of a turn to the right. We're at a good altitude. We're at a good speed. We're coming in low and slow. And we are fully configured. Our gear is down and our flaps are down almost full. Okay, so I'm going to turn the autopilot off, but I need to have a visual on the runway. I want to have a good clear visual on the runway. There it is over there. So when that is directly ahead of us and we have a good clear visual on the runway, I'll turn off the autopilot and we'll be manual from here on in. Right, there is the runway. Okay, now we're 150 knots, we're about 2,000 feet. From here on, we are going manual. So we are going to control the speed. We're going to keep one hand on the throttle, control the speed. The other hand will be on the joystick or the flight yoke to control our direction and our bank angle. Our bank angle and pitch. Okay, so autopilot off. Flight director. Now, you've got to give the throttle a bit of a movement just so that it engages, and it now is manual, and I'm now in control of the aircraft. Now, we can see the runway up ahead of us. All we've got to do basically is point the plane towards the runway. Now, see these 2 warning gauges here, these warning lights? Keep those directly on the runway, okay? Because we're going to put those right on the runway. That way when we land, we'll be directly in the middle of the runway, okay? If our plan goes accordingly. Check your speed. If you're going too low, give your throttle a bit more. Okay, so use your throttle. Keep a hand on your throttle. Make sure you stay in this plane. I want to stay about 150. So I'm going to give it a bit more throttle, bring it up around 150. My flaps are down, gears down. I'm flying it manually. Just little minor adjustments on the throttle to keep the speed right. And I'm just using the yoke to point the aircraft towards the runway. That's all I got to do. Keep it level. I can see the runway directly ahead of me. Keep these 2 warning lights heading straight towards the runway. Keep one eye on your speed. I'm going a bit slow, so I'm going to give it a bit more throttle. You want to keep it up around about 150 at this stage. So keep glancing down at your speed. Keep pushing the nose down. You don't want to take off and be too high. You want to keep coming down. You're pointing your nose now. You're aiming for the end of the runway where you see those little lights moving on the end of the runway. that's where you point the plane. Keep one hand on the throttle so you're not going too slow, so you don't drop out of the sky. One hand on the throttle, one hand on the joystick or the yoke to keep it pointed in the right direction. 140, 150 is good. I want to be about 140 when I touch down. Right, so I'm getting my plane in position now so that those warning lights go right down the center of the runway. Keeping one eye on my speed, I'm at 140 knots. Okay, see those lights at the end of the runway? Try and get those right in those warning lights there. Now the plane is easy to control. It's just like flying a Cessna because I've got it properly configured. I'm at the good speed and I'm at the right altitude. If I'm at the good speed, the plane will not fall out of the sky. I've got flaps down. I can see just visually I'm too high, so I'm going to point the nose down a little bit. And I want my wheels to touch down on those black rubber marks that are on the runway. That's why there's black rubber marks there, because that's where everyone's wheels touch down. So that's where I want to put my wheels down. Okay, cut back on the throttle. Reverse thrust, use your rudders a little bit just to adjust so you get those warning lights in the middle on the white line. That's it, keep them on the white line. Apply your brakes, speed brakes. Apply your brakes. Once you're right down, you're going right slow, let go all the brakes and start bringing up your flaps. Try and keep your nose in the center as you taxi down towards your turnout. Here's your yellow line, turn out here. So follow that yellow line as you turn out off the runway. If you're going to watch your replay or do something, which is what I should have done, you park off the runway here and then go to your replay and watch the replay mode. Just give it a little bit more juice if you've applied the brakes too much. Right, that's it. I'll put the brakes on. Right, well that's it guys. I hope that's helpful. Remember those three things as you turn around onto your approach. 1, at the right altitude. 2, at the right speed. And 3, rightfully configured. Flaps down, gear down, and providing you stay at the right speed, 150 knots or whatever the right speed is for your plane, just keep one hand on the throttle just to make sure that speed is okay, and the plane will just sit there all day long. You can just maneuver it around with the joystick or the yoke and just line up. Take your time to line up the runway and get those lights and that runway lined up with those 2 warning lights in the middle of your dash there. As long as your speed is okay, the plane's not going to fall out of the sky. It's not going to take off towards the moon. But you need to be configured, flaps down, gear down, and just traveling at that speed, okay? And it'll just sit there all day long. Fly it like a Cessna, throw it around and try and get that runway in the middle. And then just as you're about to touch down, getting really close, you can drop your throttle and bring your speed down a little bit more, a little bit of flare, and then use your rudders to keep your nose on the yellow line. Hope that is helpful. Let me know in the comments if I've missed something or you're unclear about something. I can do another little video as well if it's needed, but hopefully you find that a little bit helpful. I'm not an expert or a real pilot, but this is how I have learned to do it. Okay, take care, guys. Look forward to your comments, and I'm looking forward to hearing reports about how your landings are getting better and better and better. Take care, guys. Cheers.